أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا آباءكم وإخوانكم أولياء إن استحبوا الكفر على الإيمان ومن يتولهم منكم فأولئك هم الظالمون قل إن كان آباؤكم وأبناؤكم وإخوانكم وأزواجكم وعشيرتكم وأموال اقترفتموها وتجارة تخشون كسادها ومساكن ترضونها أحب إليكم من الله ورسوله وجهاد في سبيله فتربصوا حتى يأتي الله بأمره والله لا يهدي القوم الفاسقين. صدق الله العظيم. In this world, people have various forms of relationships and various forms of associations. And many of these relationships and associations, the Quran Kareem, the Sunnah of Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, not only allows us to keep, but in fact commands us, and we are commanded to observe a certain respect and right of those relationships and associations as well. For example, the relationship of parenthood between a parent and a child, the parent and the offspring. So we have been commanded in the Quran and Sunnah of the rights of the parents. We've been commanded in the Quran and Sunnah of the rights of our children. We've been commanded in the Quran Kareem about the rights of our other relatives, brothers, sisters, etc., etc. But all of these associations and relationships, they are all subordinate to the one and ultimate relationship, which is between Allah and His bondsman, between Allah and His servant. That Allah is Khaliq wa Makhluq, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is ma'bud, and we are His abid, that we serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these associations are subordinate to that, under that. What happens in this world is sometimes there is a difference in these relationships. That one is saying one thing, the other is saying something else. Sometimes the parent is saying one thing, the children are saying something else. Sometimes at the workplace, the boss is saying one thing, the family is saying something else. Okay. So in the world, we have a certain way of how we may manage those things. And sometimes it may be right, sometimes it may be wrong, sometimes it may not be a huge issue as well. But when it comes to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying versus what any other association is saying, that becomes a major issue. It's not an issue. It could become an issue for a person. It's not an issue as long as a person understands. Yesterday we spoke about this hierarchy as well, right? Hierarchy of ahkam, of laws. So now there is a hierarchy of relationship as well, right? That just as in a workplace there is a hierarchy of one position over the other. If someone from the higher position says something, the one of a lower position, his statement no longer is relevant, right? What that one had commanded or what he had instructed, that's no longer going to be observed. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if there is a command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the entire world says something else, parents say something else, children say something else, your workplace says something else, whatever other associations a person may have, if they're saying otherwise, then all of that is ignored. Over here, the Muslims, the Sahaba anhum, the Mu'minun, they are being commanded that in this real situation they had, that when Islam had come and many of them had accepted Islam, others had not. So those others were not just some others, they're also friends, their neighbors, their fathers, their brothers, right? So how do you navigate this now? How do you navigate that there will obviously be a tension at times, that your iman, the dictate of iman in Islam is one thing, and your family pressure may be something else. Your father who is a mushrik may be saying one thing. Your brother who is a mushrik may be saying something else. So the Quran Kareem lays this law, this principle, that neither your fathers nor your brothers, etc., and the other relationships, can you take them as your allies. Allies in the sense means that what they say you take over the word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. إِنِ اسْتَحَبُّ الْكُفْرَ عَلَى الْإِيمَانِ, if they prefer and give preference to kufr and disbelief over iman. وَمَنْ يَتَوَلَّهُمْ مِنْكُمْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. Whoever, the word here that's used in Arabic is tawalli. Tawalli in the sense means that you take what they are saying above the commands of Allah and His Rasul. Now, one situation that comes up with that was that of hijrah, of migration, when it was fard upon the Muslim community to observe hijrah and to migrate from Mecca to Medina. The Sahaba anhum, when the command was given that they must perform hijrah, it became a fard, and not any fard. Rather, at the time, it was a sign of differentiating between mu'min and kafir. It wasn't just a fard. Even fard is not just, I'm saying that the idea that it was on top of that a sign that those who would not, despite having the ability to do so, this was not considered to be a good sign for those people. Right? So a sign of iman at that time was that those that have the ability, the financial ability, the physical ability to perform hijrah and migration from Mecca to Medina when it was obligated, later after Fath Makkah, this becomes abrogated. The law no longer remains, it's mansukh, it's abrogated, because now Mecca itself has become Darul Islam. So at that time, the question comes that you have money over here, you have your tijara, you have your business over here, you have your relatives over here. What are you going to give preference to? So in this context, the Quran al-Kareem, now this is the primary context. This same idea applies to everyone else later as well. That where there is a command of Allah, in this case it was hijrah and jihad. In our context, it may be something else, right? Or for others, it may still be a form of hijrah sometimes. قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ آبَاؤُكُمْ وَأَبْنَاؤُكُمْ till the end of the ayah, that your fathers, your children, your brothers, your spouses, your family, those that are close to you, wealth that you have amassed, the businesses that you have, that you fear that they will come to an end, your homes, all of these things, if you love it, أَحَبَّ إِلَيْكُمْ, all these things which you love and that you like, if these things are more beloved to you than Allah and His Rasul, and struggling in Allah's way, then you should wait until the command of Allah comes, the amr of Allah, whether it be in the form of adab in this dunya or in the akhirah, or that eventually Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, the Muslim community, and they will see that this will come to fruition, and that will be a huge form of embarrassment for you, that you did not take part in all of this. So the mahabba, the idea of something being more beloved. So this is called hub imani. This is called, one is a love that a person has which is natural to himself, that is innate, right? Instinctive love that a person has, that's one thing. But hub imani, the minimal level that a person needs to have of love based off of iman, is that he at least rationally gives preference to what Allah and His Rasul says over everything else. The minimum level. Those that continuously do this, then they come to a point, as we see in the lives of the Sahaba, etc., that becomes their nature. That becomes instinctive. Iman is what they instinctively love more than other things which people may have love for. So they love now struggling for the sake of Allah, right? That's how you make sense of the statement of the Sahaba and their acts, not just statements, how they would observe and they would act. That they would ask for, Ya Allah, give us more lives so we can sacrifice it for your sake. So how does a person get to that? It wasn't a mere statement, they showed that. So it's a continuous effort towards that, right? That they climb in that ladder of love towards Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the minimal level of hub imani, as we said, is at least rationally a person gives preference to these things, the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, over all other things. As comes the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, مَنْ أَحَبَّ لِلَّهِ وَأَبْغَضَ لِلَّهِ وَأَعْطَى لِلَّهِ وَمَنَعَ لِلَّهِ فَقَدْ اسْتَكْمَلَ الْإِيمَانِ. The one whose love is for the sake of Allah, he loves for the sake of Allah, he hates for the sake of Allah, he gives for the sake of Allah, he does not give for everything he does. Every one of his actions are based and grounded in iman and mahabbah for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. فَقَدْ اسْتَكْمَلَ iman. That person has kamil, that person has complete iman. So this is something obviously that doesn't come overnight. It doesn't come by mere words as well. It comes by action. A person puts one step, then he goes to the next step. If a person wants to lift a higher amount of weight, he doesn't start over there. Right? He starts slowly, continuously. Eventually, he gets to that. So you have to start somewhere. So this month of Ramadan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us, we should make it a point and tell ourselves constantly that when these various associations come up, and this is if a person thinks about it, I mean, what a unfortunate circumstance a person may be, that often these things happen, that a person is at some conflict, that he wants to do what is correct, what is sunnah, what is sharia saying, but for example his children are saying otherwise. So he gives in to that and he says, okay, bachon ko khush kar de, we'll make them happy. Right? The stupidity and foolishness is this, that you are gambling your akhirah away, you're giving that away for a temporary benefit of someone else. Someone else's temporary benefit in this world. And because the idea is you think it's wrong yourself, right? For those that think it, those that don't think, consider it to be wrong, they have to first understand something is wrong. Those who think what they're doing is wrong, despite that, knowing that, they say that, okay, we'll just give in to this just so that our kids will be happy, just so that our spouse will be happy, just so that so-and-so will be happy. That is the ultimate level of foolishness. Why you think it's wrong, you know there is a problem for you in the akhirah, and the benefit that's going to be for whoever else is going to be temporary on top of that. Right? So this is something that a person should think about and put into practice. That have istiqamah, steadfastness. At the very, will everyone always be happy with you? That's another thing. That there will always be some people who are not happy. The Nabi ﷺ's mission, if it was based upon the happiness of individuals, it wouldn't have come to us today. How happy was Abu Jahl and Abu Lahab and the Quraysh of Mecca and all of these relatives? When we say Quraysh of Mecca, these aren't some others. These were his relatives as well. They weren't happy. Many of them didn't like it. Most of them, in fact, did not like that. But if the mission of Islam is based on what people like and what they like and they're happy about, then it would not have reached us today. Make dua that Allah Ta'ala gives us understanding.